According to economist Kako Nabukpo, the reason for abandoning the CFA franc for the ECO is the fact that they have had it since 1945, but it has not generated a process of intra-community exchange, and the fact that the French CFA pegged to the euro is too strong a currency because it acts as a tax on exports and a subsidy on imports, resulting in two trade balances that are structurally in deficit.
First is the fact that we have had it since 1945, but that it hasn't generated a process of intra-community exchange. The second criticism is that of competitiveness. The franc CFA pegged to the euro is too strong a currency because it acts as a tax on exports and a subsidy on imports. As a result, you have structural trade imbalances. All the world's emerging economies are fighting to have weak currencies except for the economies of the franc zone. Look at interest rates in the franc zone. Real interest rates are in double digits, 12, 13, 14%. And compare that with the eurozone. You have interest rates that are close to zero. The fourth and final criticism is that in the CFA, in the Organization of Central Banks, there is no concern for economic growth, only price stability.
Kako added that all the world's emerging economies are fighting to have weak currencies, except for the economies of the franc zone, which has high interest rates.
What makes the CFA so interesting in its analysis is that somewhere it concentrates all the ills of the franc zone economies. That is the lack of vision, the absence of governance, and the difficulty in understanding that development is an indigenous process and that the issue is the financing of the internal markets. This means that the CFA franc is a vehicle for extraversion. That is, it allows for the outflow of capital that should normally remain in Africa's franc zone.
The fourth and final criticism about the CFA is the organization of central banks where there is no concern for economic growth but only concerned about price stability. According to Kako, the arrival of the ECO could thus promote the employment of the youth and women, encourage the industrialization process and the development of private sector offering companies and start up sustainable and inclusive growth.
A test of credibility, that's to say, will West African leaders be able to do something together so that it can be said that the 15 of us were able to create a currency? Secondly, will this currency be at the service of the population, especially the rural folk who are excluded by the CFA system, which remains the currency of the elite and which I call the currency of voluntary servitude?